Hello and welcome to Unbox, the podcast that helps you to raise your awareness and see a different perspective on life. Today, we're going to continue discussing with Dr. Penny Kelly her experience in consciousness and her explorations. Specifically, we're going to talk about the robes, which are energetic beings that kept on visiting her, showing her pictures of our way of life in the 21st century.
Today we welcome Penny Kelly, the author of Robes, a book about coming changes. Welcome back, Penny.
It's good to be back.
Thank you. Today I'd like to discuss your third book, Robes, which is about everything really to do with changes in the coming few decades. Can you tell us briefly who are the Robes?
The Robes were a group of 7 little men, about 5 feet tall, maybe, if you stretched them a little. They were dressed in these monk-like robes. They had these brown robes, and they were bald, and they had these absolutely fabulously shining faces and bodies.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I said. Wow. What are you doing in my kitchen?
Well, do you know why the robes appeared in your life?
At the time, I had no clue. It was in the middle of all of that Kundalini kind of stuff happening back in 80, 81. I now understand that there are many beings of light who have evolved to great wisdom and great capacity. And they travel around the universe, and their whole purpose is to be of help to those in need, to teach those who are ready, assist people in their search for meaning and enlightenment. And because I had just experienced Kundalini, they were there trying to help me not only to see, but to marshal my abilities to see, and they had a reason. If you read the book, you come to the point where they say, this is, what we want you to do, and I was like, oh, no way. But at the time that they first came in, it was really very difficult, and I wasn't very graceful the first couple of meetings.
Can I just remind our listeners that through your Kundalini experience, which we discussed in the first podcast in the series, it's sort of that your brain was upgraded, can we say? Because the brain, people forget the brain is a transmitter as well as a receiver. So if you like, you took a quantum leap through the Kundalini experience, and now you were able to perceive other information or frequencies, and one of them are the robes, are the group of the robes.
That's true.
Can we ask what kind of information did they share with you?
Oh my. Well, they started out, they said, we want to show you some pictures. And at the time, it was like, pictures of what? I was just too disturbed that they had appeared in the first place, because that didn't fit in with my picture of reality at the time. But the pictures ended up being pictures that were more than pictures. They were almost like moving picture theater type pictures. That you would see, except that you could also step right into them. These were fabulous experiences of seeing and being in the world of the future and what was happening. And it was very unnerving at the time. But I eventually kind of said, okay, all right, I'll look at your pictures. And as I did, I became more and more aware that there was something, very extraordinary going to be happening in our world if what they were saying was true. And as it turned out, most of what I saw is now coming true.
Wow. Can you tell us what are some of the changes they showed you?
Oh, there were changes at every level. I think the first meeting, or not the first time I actually said, okay, I'll look at the pictures. That was they took me way out, so that I was like around the fringes of the atmosphere looking back at the earth.
Right.
And just looking at the planet, and all of a sudden it just kind of did this little sort of a roll. It wasn't a huge roll. It was just a little bit of, it reminded me of a fishing bobber, one of these things that, lets you know you have a fish on your hook.
Yes.
That's the way the Earth was bobbling around in space. And oceans were splashing and planets were crunching up and folding up, and it was really very frightening. And that was the first thing that they showed me. And then there were probably, I never really did count the visits, excuse me, but there were probably 18 or so visits in all. I think I detail about 16 of those in the book.
In the book, yes.
Yeah, and I saw changes in governments, changes in the nation states, changes in finance, changes in education.
Is that across the globe, Penny?
That was global. These were global changes at every level. There were changes in the way that we educated our children, changes in the way that we managed our health, and they said basically that it would most likely be health that would bring the world down to its knees, and that we had lost so much natural health that we were really at a danger point. In spite of all that, in spite of all the changes, and in the book, I did not want to focus on like the difficult things I saw. I really wanted to focus on the reasons they gave me as to why these things were happening. And they said, you've grown past all of your structures.
Right.
The result is that you need to evolve those structures, and that you cannot avoid that because you are evolving yourself. And that human potential was the only thing that could not be avoided, the development of human potential. And so we went into the future and we looked at, into several places and points in time. And we looked at the homes and what people were doing and how they were managing things and how they felt and what was operating and the communication systems and the transport systems, all very, very different from what we have today.
And was there a time span within which those changes would happen or come to pass?
Yes, they said that the first quarter of the 21st century would be when most of those changes would occur.
Oh, that's interesting.
And they said they would continue for about 100 years from the point that I was looking at them, which this was 1980, 81 in there, and 82 maybe. So figure to 2081, somewhere in there. Huge changes. So I think, at the time I thought, this is impossible.
Yes.
Now I'm looking at it going, oh dear.
Yes, it seems that so much would happen actually in such a short time, as though there's a quickening of some sort. And we have to catch up, otherwise we'll be left behind.
That's right.
It's interesting that you mentioned health, because from my understanding of your work, that also ties in to the soil, to the nutrients, to the way we've been dealing with energy resources, and eventually, which will bring on, or in fact it has started, because we've had a lot of natural disasters and famine and strange diseases in the last few years or so.
Yeah, that's true. They were quite specific about that whole business of health, and said in some ways almost the same thing that the elves had said, that we absolutely needed to reconnect with the earth and the nature of nature, the true nature.
That's interesting, yes, the nature of nature. Penny, that brings us to your next book, which is From the Soil to the Stomach, and I'd love to discuss that with you. Would you be able to come back and talk to us again?
Sure, I would love to. You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe and remember to leave a review. I'd be really grateful. See you next Friday.